Unaware his wife is secretly a self-made billionaire, he laid his hand on his pregnant wife and divorced her to marry his mistress. He didn't just leave her. He slapped his pregnant wife in the middle of their living room, watched her fall to the carpet clutching her stomach, and walked out to meet another woman. That night, Lena, who Daniel always called weak, useless, and too emotional, lay on the floor with her cheek burning, her heartbeat shaking, and her unborn child shifting under her palm. Outside, his car engine started. Inside, her life as she knew it ended. Daniel wasn't alone. In the passenger seat waited Tessa, the mistress he thought would give him a better life. She smiled as he climbed in beside her, as if she had won something worth celebrating. To Daniel, Lena was nothing. Just a quiet wife. A simple woman. A burden. He thought divorcing her, parading Tessa on his arm, and building a future without her would be the start of his new, superior life. He never knew the truth, because the woman he slapped, the woman he abandoned pregnant, the woman he humiliated with divorce papers in front of the mistress he chose, was a self-made billionaire. The hidden owner of a holding company and a tech corporation powerful enough to close doors he didn't even know existed. While Daniel mocked her lack of income, she sat in a secure office under another name, signing documents worth more than his entire world. The private security driver he thought was just a courier. He was part of the quiet protection team her board insisted on the day she decided to marry under a normal name and live in a normal house. And the day Daniel walked into court, smirking beside Tessa, believing he would win everything, that was the day the evidence hit, the day her legal team opened their files, the day security stepped forward, the day Daniel's life cracked open for everyone to see. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Lena walk alone into that courtroom again. Support her story, click subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. The house shook with the sharp thud of a door closing too hard, Daniel slamming it on his way out again. That sound always hit Lena's heart before it hit her ears. She froze for a moment, one hand resting on her pregnant belly, the other gripping the edge of the crib. Her breath trembled, not from fear, but from a sadness she was getting used to hiding. This was Lena Rivers, 29 years old, gentle in nature, soft-spoken, and known in the neighborhood as the polite young wife who always lends a hand. What no one knew, not even her own husband, was that she was also the founder of Rivers Dynamics, a tech company she built quietly from nothing, all before she married Daniel. Through a web of holding companies, her shares sat under the name L.R. Holdings, so on paper she was just a minority advisor. That was how she wanted it. She hid that identity with extreme care, choosing a life that looked small and peaceful because she wanted something money could never guarantee: love without conditions. Back when she was 23, Lena had lived in a small rented room with nothing but a used laptop and her father's old notebook of ideas. Her father, an engineer who believed in possibilities, told her once, "If your heart stays honest, success will find you." When he passed, she promised herself she would build something in his honor. She did it in silence, coding through nights when no one noticed, building partnerships through video calls where she used only her initials. Her legal team built trusts and shell companies so her personal identity stayed hidden. The board agreed on one condition: she would accept discreet security and a private protection protocol, especially if she ever married. She wanted to know if someone could love her, not for her empire. She didn't reveal her success to Daniel, because early in their relationship, he used to say things like, "Rich people lose touch with life. I'd never want a woman who thinks she's above me." His words burrowed deep. She hid her empire to protect the fragile hope that he truly loved her, not what she owned. Now, years later, standing in the quiet nursery, she gently folded tiny baby clothes. Each fold felt like a prayer for the child she wanted to bring into a peaceful home. The soft cotton brushed her fingertips, grounding her in a world she wished could stay warm and still. Her mind drifted into a flashback 8 months earlier. She sat at her kitchen table, laptop open. A large financial dashboard glowed on the screen. The number at the top, $3,800,000,000, reflected faintly on her face. She wasn't proud of it. She wasn't ashamed either. It was just her life's work, hidden behind quiet routines. That moment ended abruptly when Daniel stepped into the room. She snapped the laptop shut so fast the sound echoed. Daniel didn't notice the number. He didn't notice her nervous breath. He just asked what was for dinner. Now back in the present, her hum softened as she placed a folded onesie on the shelf. A sudden knock at the front door startled her. When she opened it, a man stood there, broad shoulders, calm eyes, dressed in a simple gray jacket. This was Michael, 34 years old, officially her driver and errand support to anyone who asked, but in reality part of her company's private protection unit. His job was simple: rotate between driving her to discreet meetings, delivering sealed documents, and keeping a quiet eye on any risk around her home. He handed her a slim envelope marked Quarterly Report, L.R. Holdings Private. Lena's eyes widened for a split second. She tucked the envelope against her side before Daniel could return. Michael lowered his voice. "Everything is stable, ma'am," he said gently. "The board also approved the personal contingency meeting you requested. They're ready whenever you are." Her stomach tightened. That personal contingency meeting was about one thing. What would happen to her assets and safety if her marriage ever turned dangerous? Lena nodded, whispering, "Thank you. I'll confirm a date later. And please, don't let him see these." Michael simply bowed his head. To him, she wasn't just a client, she was a leader who treated her staff with a kindness rare for people at her level. As he stepped away, Mrs. Carter, the warm but nosy neighbor in her late 50s, appeared at her mailbox. "Oh, Lena dear," she called out, adjusting her glasses. "You're always working on something. You remind me of a little bee, always buzzing." Lena forced a smile. "Just keeping busy." Mrs. Carter nodded approvingly, unaware of how heavy those little projects really were. Inside the house, Daniel returned briefly, irritation written across his face. "You're spending too much time on pointless stuff," he complained, waving his hand dismissively at the nursery. "I need a wife who supports me, not one who hides in here all day." He left again before she could respond. Lena's hand trembled as she reached for her phone on the dresser. A new text appeared from a secure company contact, the same masked number that handled her board communication. "Meeting approved. Protection protocols ready when you are." He must never know yet. Her breath caught. She locked the phone immediately. A quiet fear rippled under her ribs. What if she really needed those protocols one day? Her fingers curled around the phone tighter. She looked toward the front door, where Daniel had disappeared minutes ago, and whispered, "Please, not yet." But the real question lingered like smoke in the room. What exactly would she have to protect herself from, and how long before everything collapsed? Outside, Michael paused beside his car, watching the empty driveway where Daniel's car had been earlier. His eyes narrowed not in suspicion of Lena, but of Daniel's restless patterns. He murmured softly, "This won't stay hidden for long." The argument hit like a thunderclap. "Why is this house such a mess?" Daniel shouted the moment he stepped inside, slamming the front door so hard the walls shook. His voice cut through the quiet home like a blade. Lena flinched. She was in the hallway, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other steadying herself against the wall. Daniel Rivers, 31 years old, her husband of 3 years, was becoming someone she barely recognized. His anger was sharper these days, quicker and colder. He threw his keys onto the table. "You're slowing everything down, Lena. Always tired, always emotional. I can't get anything done anymore." His words were harsh, but what hurt most was how easily they rolled out, as if he practiced them on his way home. The intensity faded as he stormed into the kitchen, leaving Lena standing in the hallway with trembling hands. She lowered herself onto the couch and tried to steady her breathing. The reflection came slowly, like a wound reopening. A flashback bloomed in her mind, the early days, when Daniel was still kind. He was struggling with overdue bills back then. She remembered the night he came home, looking defeated, whispering, "I don't know how I'll fix this." Back then, she wasn't ready to reveal her hidden world, but she couldn't stand seeing him drown. So she quietly paid the bills using one of her trust accounts, routing the payment through an anonymous online transfer arranged by her accountant. She hid the proof screenshots, account numbers in her father's old notebook. Daniel never noticed, never asked how the debts disappeared. He just patted her head and said he must have gotten lucky. That night taught her something important. If Daniel knew about her wealth, He wouldn't love her. He'd use her. That was the first time the fear settled inside her chest. Now, years later, the fear was back worse. Lena rose slowly and walked to the kitchen doorway. Daniel was hunched over his phone, typing fast, his lips curled into a sly smile. She recognized that smile. It wasn't for her. When he noticed her standing there, he tilted the screen away and locked it instantly. "Can I help you?" he asked sharply. She shook her head and stepped away. The moment she turned, he unlocked the phone again. On the screen was a message from Tessa Green, 27 years old, a woman Daniel met through work events. The message was flirtatious, bold, and typed with confidence. "Miss you already. Tonight?" Daniel grinned and replied quickly, "Of course." Then he deleted the entire conversation thread, a habit he had developed only recently. Outside, through the thin curtains, Michael leaned against his car. On paper, he was waiting in case Lena needed a ride to a doctor's appointment or meeting. In reality, his job was to monitor threats and report unusual behavior to her protection team. He was used to seeing clients hide secrets, but seeing Daniel speed away earlier in a red car with the same woman 3 evenings in a row had been different. It wasn't his place to intervene in personal choices, but he never ignored patterns that could become dangerous. And tonight, the pattern was growing darker. Later that evening, Daniel grabbed his jacket without explanation. "I'm going out. Work dinner." He didn't look at Lena when he said it. She forced a smile. "Be safe." He didn't reply. He left. Through the front window, Lena saw Daniel get into a red car not his. Inside was Tessa, hair curled, lips painted, smiling at him. This time, there was no way to pretend it was innocent. Michael, still parked across the street, watched the moment with narrowed eyes. He made no move, no reaction, but the weight of understanding settled over him. Daniel wasn't just drifting away, he was building another life. Inside the house, Lena tried to calm her racing mind. She walked to the bedroom, hoping to distract herself by folding laundry. But when she reached for Daniel's jacket to hang it, something slipped out of the inside pocket and fell to the floor. A white slip of paper. She bent slowly, picked it up, and froze. A hotel receipt. Room service for 2. A romantic suite. And the date written at the top was clear and sharp. 1 week ago. 1 week ago, the night he told her he had to work late, that he needed space, that she was too needy lately. Her breath broke. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the receipt as if it were a foreign object. The room felt heavier, smaller. This wasn't doubt anymore. This was truth knocking. And for the first time, fear replaced hope. Outside, Michael looked at the dark window of the bedroom and whispered to himself, "If this continues, something worse is coming." The cracks behind closed doors were no longer cracks. They were warnings. Daniel burst through the front door with the force of a storm, his footsteps harsh against the hardwood floor. "Why are you going through my things?" he shouted, before Lena could even turn around. His voice filled the house with a level of intensity that could shake the air itself. Lena froze by the bedroom doorway, clutching the hotel receipt she found in his jacket. Her heart pounded not out of anger, but out of fear of what this moment truly meant. Daniel Rivers, once gentle, now stood in front of her, trembling with rage. His eyes darted to the paper in her hand. She lifted it slowly, her voice soft but steady. "Daniel, what is this?" For a moment, silence cracked between them. Then his expression shifted, cold, defensive, sharp. "Why are you snooping?" he demanded. "Why can't you respect my privacy?" Lena's lips parted in disbelief. "Privacy? You told me you were working that night." He scoffed and stepped closer. "You're unbelievable, Lena. Instead of focusing on this baby, you're digging through my pockets? Do you know how ungrateful that makes you?" Ungrateful. The word hit her harder than she expected. The intensity of the moment settled into a tight, painful stillness. Lena lowered her eyes, trying to calm her shaking breath. She had wanted answers, not a war. Her voice softened. "I'm not trying to fight. I just want to understand." Daniel turned away, grabbing his phone from the dresser. "No. What you want is control." Before she could respond, his phone lit up and vibrated. He answered quickly, putting it on speaker without thinking. "Hey," he said, his tone suddenly softer. A new voice filled the room, sharp, feminine, clear. "Don't let her manipulate you. Make a decision." It was Tessa, her voice echoing through the speaker like poison dripping into the room. Lena's eyes widened. Daniel didn't even flinch. He simply pressed the phone tighter to his ear and walked toward the door. "I'll call you back," he muttered into the phone before ending the call. Then he turned to Lena with a glare. "You never appreciate anything I do. You hold me down. I can't breathe in this house anymore." His words sliced straight through her chest. He stormed toward the exit. Lena took a step forward, her voice breaking. "Daniel, I thought you wanted this family." He paused just long enough for her to hope, but he never looked back. The door slammed, rattling picture frames on the wall. The reflections settled over her like heavy rain. She sank slowly onto the edge of the bed, one hand holding her belly as if shielding the child from the moment. For the first time since her pregnancy began, she felt truly alone. A knock sounded softly on the still-closed front door a few minutes later. It was Michael, the 3-4-year-old security driver who had been quietly watching over her for months. Dressed in his usual plain jacket, he stepped inside with careful steps after she called, "Come in," his expression calm but concerned. He kept his distance respectful, steady. "Ma'am," he said in a low, careful tone, "if you ever need help, just say the word. The protocols your company set up, they're there for times like this." Lena looked up at him, tears gathering but refusing to fall. She knew there was a whole system behind him, lawyers, investigators, security, but she had never wanted to use any of it for her personal life. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Thank you, Michael. I'll be okay." He nodded once, but his eyes said he didn't believe that. Not fully. He left quietly, closing the door behind him with gentle caution. Night settled across the room, dim and heavy. Lena lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling while the hotel receipt rested beside her like a wound. Her phone buzzed suddenly, a message from an unsaved number. She hesitated before picking it up. The message was short and unforgiving. "She'll hold you back. Choose me." Tessalena's breath caught, her eyes stinging. The words confirmed what the hotel receipt had already whispered. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a battle she never saw coming. Outside, Michael stood under the porch light, watching the dark street. His voice was barely audible as he whispered to himself, "If this continues, he won't stop at words." Daniel slammed the living room door so hard the wall shook. "Give me my phone, Lena," he shouted, stepping toward her with fast, angry strides. His voice blasted through the house like a shockwave, so sharp the lamps rattled. Lena stood near the sofa, holding his phone out in her trembling hand. She hadn't meant to look through it, not fully. But when it lit up with Tessa's name flashing boldly across the screen, the preview of the message burned her eyes before she could look away. Daniel snatched the phone from her grip. "You're snooping again?" he barked. His chest rose and fell with rough breaths, frustration pouring out of him in bursts she could barely predict anymore. Lena lifted her hands in a plea, her voice gentle, scared but calm. "Daniel, please. I only saw the name. I didn't mean..." "Liar," he screamed, pointing at her as if she were a stranger. "You dig through my things, you spy on me, and then you act like the victim." The intensity of his anger filled the entire house. She instinctively brought one hand to her belly, protecting the child inside her. Her voice softened to a whisper. "I'm not trying to fight. I just want to talk. I'm worried about us. About you." But her softness only fueled his fire. Daniel stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat of his anger pressing against her skin. "I'm tired of your guilt trips. I'm tired of pretending this marriage still works. You're dragging me down with your moods, your questions, your..." She reached out gently, trying to touch his arm. "Daniel, please." Then it happened. His hand shot across her cheek with a sharp crack. The slap echoed through the room like a gunshot. Lena stumbled backward, her breath knocked out of her chest. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the carpet, her hands instantly flying to her stomach. The room turned silent. So silent it felt like the whole world had stopped breathing. Daniel froze, his hand still half raised. his face draining of color as if even he couldn't believe what he had done. Lena whispered through trembling lips, "The baby, Daniel." But instead of concern, something darker twisted his expression. His voice dropped into a cold, empty tone she had never heard before. "Maybe this is a mistake," he said. Then he took a step back, eyes hollow. "Maybe you are the mistake." The words stabbed deeper than the slap. He grabbed his jacket, opened the front door, and walked out without a second glance. Through the window, she saw him get into Tessa's car waiting at the curb, the headlights cutting through the night. He left her there on the floor, holding their child while running to another woman. The intensity leaked out of the room slowly, leaving behind a heavy, suffocating stillness. Lena remained curled on the carpet. Tears fell, but she didn't sob. They slid quietly down her face like drops that had been waiting too long. Her cheek throbbed, but the ache in her heart was worse. After a long moment, the living room door eased open just a crack. Michael, the quiet security driver who had been assigned to watch over her, stepped inside cautiously. He had heard the shout from the driveway and the sudden silence afterward. He wore his usual plain jacket, face filled with worry but controlled strength. He knelt beside her without touching her, respecting her space. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" His voice was soft, steady, a whisper of safety in a broken house. She didn't answer right away. She just pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the baby move faintly under her palm. Michael's training took over. He reached slowly for his phone, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "We're moving to Protocol C," he said to the secure line. "A pregnant principal has been assaulted. Get the medical team and start evidence collection. Now. Protocol C." The phrase hung heavy in the air. It meant danger. It meant escalation. It meant the protective system she had tried not to use was now fully awake. Within the hour, a discreet company doctor and a female nurse arrived in an unmarked car. They examined her, checked the baby's heartbeat, and documented the bruising with careful photos and written reports. Lena clung to the sound of her child's strong heartbeat like a lifeline. Only when they confirmed the baby was stable did Michael let himself exhale. Lena looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. She knew Protocol C was serious. She knew life would never be the same after tonight. Michael met her gaze, voice steady. "You're not alone, ma'am. Not anymore. Your team is activated. We'll handle this properly." As he helped her sit upright on the sofa, his phone buzzed again with a message from a secure contact. "Begin Phase 1. Legal prep. She must be protected. He must be watched." And in the shadows of the coming scene, a storm was already preparing, one that would end Lena's silence forever. The pounding on the front door shook the entire house. Bam, bam, bam. The sound hit with such force that Lena jumped, one hand flying to her belly as her heart hammered against her ribs. She was still healing from the night of the slap, her cheek faintly yellow from the fading bruise, when the world decided to hit her again. She opened the door slowly. Standing on her porch was a man in a dark suit, a process server, mid-40s, professional, emotionless. He held a thick stack of papers in his hands, and at the edge of the sidewalk, just far enough to avoid looking official but close enough to be seen, was Daniel. His arm was wrapped proudly around Tessa, the mistress, 27 years old, confident, smiling like she had already won something she never deserved. Daniel didn't look ashamed. He didn't look conflicted. He looked triumphant. The process server cleared his throat and spoke in a formal tone. "Mrs. Rivers, you've been served." He placed the papers in her shaking hands. The bold letters at the top blurred as tears threatened to rise. Petition for divorce. The intensity of the moment stabbed through her chest, but Lena didn't break. Not this time. Daniel smirked, tightening his hold on Tessa. "Just sign them, Lena." He tilted his head arrogantly. "I've moved on." Tessa leaned into him, smiling sweetly, the kind of smile used to hurt. "We're together now," she added softly, almost playfully. "It's better this way." The reflection came quietly inside Lena's heart. She remembered the early days when Daniel held her hand gently and whispered dreams of a family. She remembered believing he was the one safe place in her life. She remembered giving him everything: time, trust, love, only to be left standing barefoot on her own porch with divorce papers in her hand. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't plead. She simply lifted her chin and answered with a calmness that shocked everyone, including herself. "If this is what you want." She folded the papers neatly against her chest. "I'll see you in court." Daniel laughed. A cruel, mocking sound. "You?" he sneered. "Court? You can't even afford a lawyer." At that exact moment, footsteps sounded behind her. Before Lena could respond, a voice cut through the air, smooth, confident, controlled. "She can afford me." From the walkway stepped Attorney Grant, early 42nds, sharp suit, sharp mind, and the top strategist in Lena's hidden legal team. Protocol C had already assigned him to her case after the assault. This was the morning of their first scheduled meeting. The knock on the door had simply come before his hand reached for the bell. Daniel's smile dropped instantly. Grant walked up the steps and positioned himself beside Lena with quiet authority. His tone was polite but edged with steel. "Mr. Rivers, you'll receive our response through formal channels." Daniel blinked, confusion and annoyance flashing across his face. "Who are you?" Grant smiled slightly. "Her attorney. Retained and paid in full." Lena didn't miss the way Daniel's eyes narrowed, as if he suddenly realized she knew more and had more than he ever imagined. On the street, Michael watched from his usual position near a discreet black car, expression unreadable. Every detail, every word spoken, was being quietly noted for the file. He knew this moment was the beginning of something much larger. Daniel scoffed, trying to regain control. "Fine, bring your fancy lawyer. The judge will see I'm happier without you." Tessa squeezed his arm. "Let's go, Daniel. We have plans today." They walked away together toward a waiting car. Daniel didn't look back. The car door opened for them, and before driving off, Tessa waved at Lena with a small, smug flick of her fingers. Lena swallowed hard. Grant turned to her softly. "Are you all right?" She nodded, even though nothing felt all right. Grant lowered his voice as Daniel's car pulled away into the distance. "It's time," he whispered. "We'll show them the truth soon." His eyes drifted toward the thick folder of papers in her hand, then toward the house she no longer felt safe in. Behind them, Michael stepped closer, speaking quietly into a small earpiece. "Protocol C confirmed. Phase 2 preparation underway." Lena didn't hear him, but a chill brushed her spine, a warning that everything was about to change. Before Grant led her inside, she heard Tessa's laugh echo faintly from down the street. In the weeks that followed, as lawyers filed motions and dates were set, Daniel did exactly what he bragged he would do. He moved in with Tessa, introduced her as his future wife, and set a wedding date for after the divorce. In his mind, the divorce was nothing more than the doorway he had to walk through to marry his mistress. To him, Lena was just paperwork to sign away on his way to a better life. But the truth was only beginning to rise. Grant placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and murmured, "Next, we gather the evidence." The office door closed behind Lena with a soft but final click. The intensity hit instantly. Inside the room stood Investigator Harris, mid-42nds, tall, sharp eyes behind thin glasses. He worked for Lena's private legal protection team, the same team her board assembled years ago when they insisted she should never live her life without a safety net. Now, that safety net was fully active. Harris spread a series of folders across the sleek black table with precise, deliberate movements. "Mrs. Rivers," he said, voice low but firm, "we've gathered the first batch of evidence. You need to see this." The weight of those words pressed hard against her chest. She sat down slowly, gripping the armrest for balance. She was still the same Lena on the outside, gentle, calm, but inside, something new was forming. A quiet strength, a rising fire. Attorney Grant entered behind her, early 42nds, composed as always, carrying another stack of documents. His expression told her the truth. Today would shape everything that came next. The intensity of the evidence-filled table softened as Lena exhaled and pressed her hand to her stomach. She looked around the office, sleek but not extravagant. Clean lines, black shelves, a single plant, controlled lighting. The space belonged to her legal team, not her executive office, but it still matched the hidden world she lived in. Powerful, quiet, intentional. Reflection washed over her. How did it come to this? Harris opened the first folder. This is your husband's affair timeline, he began. Photos, receipts, screenshots, all laid out in clear order. Lena swallowed hard as she scanned dates, restaurant visits, hotel stays, rideshare receipts with Tessa's address. Gifts charged to Daniel's card while he told Lena he was saving for the baby. Some of this came from the hotel's legal department after we sent formal requests, Harris explained. Some came from a co-worker who filed a confidential statement. They thought you deserved to know. Then Harris opened another folder. Next, Daniel's financial misconduct at his workplace. Lena's eyebrows lifted slightly. Misconduct? Harris nodded. Unauthorized transfers, expense reports that don't match, personal charges hidden under project budgets. He tapped the pages. We coordinated with the company's internal auditor. Once they realized he'd been using their money, they were very willing to cooperate. This is enough for serious trouble if the regulator follows through. Grant spoke softly, watching her face. And this is what he feared you'd find if he stayed. Her heart tightened. Harris slid another folder toward her. Finally, the written and digital records of his emotional abuse and threats. When Lena saw the contents, her breath caught. There were voicemails he left after arguments, his voice shouting through the speaker in ugly bursts. You're nothing. Lena. You're holding me back. Maybe you're the mistake. There were also transcripts of the night of the slap taken from Michael's report and the written statement from the company doctor who examined her afterward. A photo taken that night showed her faint bruise, her hand over her pregnant belly. The reflection deepened as another memory stirred. A flashback from years ago, long before any of this. She was 23 again, sitting on the floor of her tiny rented room, laptop in her lap, coding through exhaustion. Her first idea for a tech platform was just taking shape. She had once tried to share it with Daniel while they were still dating casually. She remembered his exact words. Lena, your ideas won't go anywhere. You're dreaming too big. Just stick to something simple. She had smiled then, hiding the sting, hiding the determination that burned behind her gentle eyes. That night she promised herself she would build something great quietly. She would rise quietly. She would succeed quietly. And if someone loved her, it would be for her soul, not her empire. Now, in this office, that quiet empire stood behind her like a shield. Grant placed a pen beside her hand. Lena, he said softly, it's time to authorize the next steps. We'll have our forensic accountants cooperate with his employer, file motions for financial records, and finalize the complaint for the judge. We'll also secure full custody filings, given the documented abuse. Lena lifted the pen with steady fingers. Her voice held no anger, only clarity. Do it. She signed her name. The shape of it felt different now. Stronger, sharper. At the door, Michael stood silent but alert. His role was clear. Protection. He reported to her company's security division, not to Daniel, and had been watching over her ever since the first signs of danger appeared. He nodded to Grant, confirming that Phase 2 of Protocol C was ready. Harris closed the last folder, his tone shifting into something heavier, almost grim. Mrs. Rivers, he said carefully, I need you to understand something. When the judge sees this, your husband will not walk out of that courtroom the same man. He paused. Then Grant closed the final file with a soft but echoing snap. When the judge sees this, Grant repeated, you'll walk out protected. He looked directly into her eyes. He'll walk out exposed. The words filled the room like thunder. The intensity settled into silence. Lena exhaled, slowly. Protected. Exposed. Two paths, one she never asked for, one he created himself. As they packed the folders, Harris received a text on his phone. He read it, then lifted his gaze slightly. The court summons is ready. The clerk will deliver it this week. Michael opened the door for her and murmured quietly, Ma'am, he won't be ready for what comes next. Where Daniel and Tessa would feel the first tremor of the storm about to break. The knock on the door hit like a hammer. Bang, bang, bang. Daniel jerked awake on the couch of his small new apartment, the one he'd chosen after leaving Lena. Tessa rushed out of the bedroom, her hair messy, irritation already on her face. Daniel swung the door open with annoyance. Standing there was a court clerk, a man in his late 50s with sharp eyes and a steady voice. He held a sealed envelope. Daniel Rivers? Daniel frowned. Yeah? The clerk handed him the envelope. You've been served. Court date is listed inside. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Daniel staring at the papers in shock. The intensity hit immediately. He tore open the envelope, eyes scanning the bold heading. Civil court summons divorce, hearing Tessa lean close, reading over his shoulder. Her face twisted into frustration. Ugh, finally. She's dragging this too long. She slid her arms around Daniel from behind, voice dripping with impatience. Just finalize this, then we can move into that big house you promised. Her words were sugar-coated greed. Daniel shrugged her off. I know. But his tone was sharper than usual. Tessa crossed her arms. You said once the divorce starts, everything gets easier. Money gets easier. Life gets easier. He scoffed and paced the living room. Relax, Tessa. She's got nothing. What's she gonna do? Show up with a dollar store lawyer? Tessa didn't laugh. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Are you sure? She hasn't cried. She hasn't called. She hasn't begged. Doesn't that strike you as strange? Daniel waved her off. She's weak, Tessa. Always has been. She'll fold in court. But something unsteady flickered in his eyes, a ghost of doubt he refused to acknowledge. The scene slowed as he sank onto the couch. A reflection washed over him. Lena was always quiet, always gentle, always forgiving. But she didn't scream when he slapped her. She didn't beg when he served the divorce papers. She didn't argue when he left to live with Tessa. She simply said, I'll see you in court. Something about that sentence gnawed at him. Tessa sat beside him, running her fingers through her hair, frustrated. I'm serious, Daniel. I want that house. I want that life you promised. And you'll get it, he snapped, needing to shut her up. I'll finish this in court. She won't fight back. Tessa softened, leaning against him again. Her greed was gentle only when she wanted something. You better, she whispered. I'm not going to live my life waiting on your ex-wife's feelings. Across town, a different world existed, one Daniel never tried to understand. Cut to Lena walking through a pristine courthouse hallway, Attorney Grant at her side. Her steps were slow but steady, her posture straight, her presence quietly powerful. She wasn't dressed like a billionaire yet. Everything about her felt controlled, intentional, ready. People passing her turned to look without understanding why. Grant carried a sleek briefcase. Inside were the folders from the scene, the evidence that would turn Daniel's world upside down. He spoke quietly as they walked. I've confirmed the judge for your hearing. He's fair. He'll listen. We'll present everything in order of fair. Financial misconduct, the domestic incident, your true financial standing. Lena nodded, her face calm. Her silence wasn't fear anymore. It was strength. Grant opened a courtroom door for her. Not the main hearing room yet, but a small side chamber where preliminary filings were reviewed. This is the beginning, he said. The reflection in her eyes said she understood. Back at Daniel's apartment, Tessa sat at the table scrolling through her tablet. The atmosphere had settled slow, quiet, until her brows suddenly furrowed. On a business gossip page, an article headline glowed. Who is the mysterious CEO behind LR Holdings, quietly buying up tech and real estate? Tessa blinked. The initials repeated in her mind. L. R. L. Rivers? Lena Rivers? She clicked the article. It mentioned a private female owner with initials LR, connected to a major tech firm called Rivers Dynamics, a company Daniel once mocked as some startup nonsense when Lena watched a news segment in silence years ago. A small seed of fear dug into her stomach. She glanced toward Daniel, who was busy ranting about how he would win everything in court. Tessa didn't say a word, but the fear stayed. She stared at the initials one more time and whispered under her breath, "This could be a problem." The courtroom doors opened as Daniel strutted inside like he owned the entire building. Intensity hit instantly. He wore a brand new suit too expensive for his actual salary, and he held Tessa proudly by the waist. Tessa smiled with smug confidence, her heels clicking loudly as if she were walking down a runway, not into a divorce hearing. Daniel scanned the room and smirked. "Easy win," he whispered to Tessa. She nodded, gripping his arm. "Just finish her today. I want our new life to start." Court spectators turned as Lena entered the hallway. A hush spread. She didn't walk alone. She was escorted by two private security guards dressed in clean black suits, Michael leading them. Michael, who had once appeared to Daniel as just a driver, now stood tall and official, making it clear he was trained protection attached to someone important. His presence added weight gravity to Lena's steps. She wasn't loud, she wasn't flashy, but something about her made people sit up straighter. Daniel frowned at the sight. "Why does she have security?" he muttered. Tessa shrugged, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes. "Maybe she's being dramatic." Lena took her seat beside Attorney Grant, who opened a polished briefcase and pulled out several organized folders. Investigator Harris sat behind them, observing quietly, a silent storm waiting for permission to move. The judge entered late 60 seconds, stern, respected, and everyone rose. Court is now in session. After everyone sat, the judge looked between the two parties. "We begin with opening statements. Mr. Rivers, you may speak." Daniel rose confidently. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth, practiced. "My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, is unstable, emotional, and unable to provide a suitable environment for our future child. She's financially dependent on me, and frankly," Lena remained calm, hands folded in her lap. Daniel continued, "She has nothing to offer. I'm the one who supported us. I'm the one with stability." A few spectators shook their heads, but Daniel didn't notice. The judge turned. "Attorney Grant, your opening?" Grant stood slowly, deliberately. "Your Honor, today we will correct every falsehood presented by Mr. Rivers." He opened the first folder. The reflection in the room shifted like the air held its breath. "First," Grant said, placing photos on the evidence screen, "Mr. Rivers has not been a faithful husband. Images of Daniel and Tessa, restaurant dates, hotel check-ins, entrance photos from the same hotel receipt Lena once found flashed across the screen." Tessa's face went white. Daniel's smirk dropped. "Second," Grant continued, "Mr. Rivers has been involved in financial misconduct at his workplace." Harris stepped forward as a witness, handing documents to the clerk. Internal audit reports, flagged transactions, emails involving Daniel's approval of fake expenses. These records, Grant explained, were provided by his employer's internal auditor and forwarded to the financial regulator. "We are submitting them today as part of our case regarding his credibility and stability." Murmurs filled the courtroom. Daniel's hands began to shake. "Third," Grant said, pressing a button. Audio recordings played. Daniel's own voice echoed through the room. "You're nothing, Lena. You're holding me back. Maybe you're the mistake." "These," Grant said, calmly, "are voicemails and recorded statements taken after the protection protocols were activated. They document a pattern of emotional abuse." Then the screen showed a photo, Lena, faint bruising on her cheek, hand over her pregnant belly, time-stamped and signed by the examining doctor. Gasps erupted. The judge leaned forward, voice stern. "Mr. Rivers, is this you?" Daniel swallowed hard. I can explain." Grant wasn't finished. He lifted the final document, thicker, sealed with a gold emblem. "Lastly, Your Honor, the truth about Mrs. Rivers' financial status." He handed the document to the judge. The judge's eyebrows rose as he read. "Confirmation of assets. LR Holdings. Controlling shareholder of Rivers Dynamics. Owner, Lena Rivers. Verified net worth, $3.8 billion. Silence. Shock. An eruption of whispers. Tessa's jaw dropped so far it almost trembled. Daniel went pale color draining from his face like water spilling from a cracked cup. No, that can't be," he whispered. The judge looked at Daniel with slow, piercing disbelief. "Mr. Rivers, did you knowingly divorce a woman you believed was financially dependent on you?" Daniel stammered, sweat collecting on his forehead. I, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. The evidence clearly shows, Grant added, that while he mocked her supposed lack of income, she was quietly protecting her assets and building an empire he never bothered to ask about. The judge's tone hardened. Clearly. Daniel turned toward Lena, reaching out with shaking hands. Lena, please, why didn't you tell me? She didn't look at him. Grant closed the folder carefully. Your Honor, he said, voice steady. My client moves for full custody of the child, spousal restitution based on documented abuse, and that all evidence of financial misconduct be forwarded to the proper authorities. The room erupted again. Near the back, two plain-clothed investigators, who had already begun reviewing Daniel's case with the regulator, watched closely. Daniel staggered backward, realizing the room was no longer on his side. He panicked, voice cracking. Lena, please, say something. You can't let them. Lena remained still, calm, silent. Not unkind, just done. As the judge reviewed the requests, Michael leaned slightly toward Harris and Grant and whispered, "This is only the beginning of his fall." The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Then the judge spoke. After reviewing the evidence presented today, he said slowly, "This court grants temporary full custody of the unborn child to Mrs. Rivers, issues a protective order, and refers all financial misconduct documents to the appropriate authorities." The intensity hit like a thunderbolt. At the back of the room, the two plain-clothed investigators stepped forward. They had waited for the judge's referral. Now they had what they needed. The judge continued, voice firm. In addition, based on the regulator's pre-filed complaint and the evidence introduced, there is now a warrant for Mr. Rivers' arrest on suspicion of fraud and related offenses. Mr. Rivers will be taken into custody for further investigation. Two court security officers moved instantly, their boots striking the floor with heavy, disciplined power. They positioned themselves on either side of Daniel. Daniel's eyes widened. Wait, no. His voice cracked. His confidence vanished. His arrogance shattered. He stumbled backward as if the order itself had slapped him harder than he had ever slapped Lena. Tessa gasped and stepped away from him, disgust replacing greed in her expression. One of the officers took hold of Daniel's arm. The judge's voice cut through the rising noise. Order. This court will not tolerate outbursts. The room erupted into whispers anyway. Court spectators leaned in, shocked, hungry for more of the collapse happening right before their eyes. Daniel broke. He twisted suddenly, slipping from one officer's grip long enough to stumble toward Lena's table. The officers followed quickly but gave him a small second, enough for the moment to show itself. He fell to his knees so suddenly the second officer hesitated. He crawled across the courtroom floor toward Lena, tears streaking down his face. Lena, please don't do this. His voice trembled, desperate, raw. He clutched at the air as if trying to grab the past and pull it back. Lena did not move. She stood still now, her hands folded, her face calm, yet not cruel. Daniel dragged himself closer, crawling like a man drowning. I'll change. I promise. I'll be better, I swear. Just don't let them take me. He reached her feet, sobbing, staring up at her with wide, terrified eyes. You're rich? Baby, we can fix everything. We can start over. Just give me a chance. His words were frantic, sticky with regret only because he had been caught. Lena's eyes softened not with love, but with clarity. The reflection in her heart became clear. He never begged when she cried. He never begged when she was bruised. He never begged when he walked away with another woman. He begged now because his world was collapsing. Behind Daniel, Tessa stood frozen, her face twisted in disbelief and disgust. You told me she was nothing, she spat. You said she had nothing. Daniel looked back at her with a broken expression. Tessa, listen, wait. She stepped away as if his touch carried shame. Her voice cut like ice. I'm not going down with you. She turned and walked out of the courtroom, without looking back. The doors closed behind her with a cold final thud. Daniel whipped back toward Lena, the last person in the world he could cling to. He reached out and grabbed the hem of her dress. Please. I need you. His voice cracked under the weight of his collapse. Lena looked down at him, her expression calm and steady. She slowly pulled her dress away from his grasp, her fingers gentle but firm. Her voice was soft, soft enough to break him completely. You needed me long before this day, Daniel. She took a small step back. And you chose someone else. The words landed like a final verdict. The officers moved in again and lifted Daniel to his feet. He struggled, reaching toward her as if his hands could rewind time. Lena, please! His scream echoed across the high courtroom walls. Lena didn't flinch. She turned and walked toward the exit, her steps steady, graceful, untouchable. Daniel's cries grew louder. Don't leave me, Lena! But she kept walking. She never looked back. The spectators watched in stunned silence. Some whispered. Some shook their heads. Most simply stared at the woman who had just walked away with nothing left to prove. Behind her, Daniel's voice broke into shattered pieces as the officers handed him over to the waiting investigators in the hallway. Micro cliffhanger. As Lena stepped into the corridor, Michael approached with a quiet nod. He spoke in a calm, steady tone. Ma'am, everything is ready for the final separation papers. Grant will finalize the settlement terms with the court's orders included. His next words carried a hint of what was coming. You'll have your closure soon. The room filled with intense silence, the kind that follows storms, the kind that feels too calm to be real. A newborn cried sharply, breaking the quiet with sudden intensity. Lena sat upright in a soft armchair, holding her baby girl against her chest. Her hands shook not from fear, but from the overwhelming power of new life. Tears warmed her cheeks as the baby nuzzled closer, tiny fingers curling around her mother's thumb. This was peace, true peace, hard-won peace, and it began the moment she walked out of that courtroom without looking back. Months had passed since that day. The legal process had continued, papers signed, orders stamped, Daniel facing his own investigations far away from her. She hadn't attended any of his hearings. She didn't need to. The intensity faded into gentle reflection as Lena looked around the bright, sunlit nursery, soft yellow curtains, a white crib, a mobile turning slowly above the baby. Nothing loud, nothing heavy, just calm. On a side table rested a crisp envelope, gold sealed with the emblem of her company. Rivers Dynamics, Board of Directors. Inside was a simple line. Congratulations, Madam Chairwoman. Public appointment approved and announced. The title still felt unreal sometimes, even after everything. She had been the true chairwoman long before the divorce, quietly, secretly, behind another name. Now, for the first time, the board insisted she take her rightful place openly. A flashback montage played in her mind. Her younger self coding through the night. Her father's notebook, full of ideas and hope. Hiding her wealth to build a life based on real love. Daniel laughing at her dreams. Finding the hotel receipt, the slap, the divorce papers. The courtroom reveal $3.8 billion. Daniel falling to his knees as his world collapsed. Each memory flickered like pages turning in a book she had finally finished. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Michael, her loyal security protector, entered quietly. He was dressed in his usual calm, clean-cut style, offering stability in every step. Ma'am, he said, his voice soft for the baby. The final paperwork is complete. Grant filed everything this morning. He paused, giving her a warm, respectful nod. You're officially free. The court recognized your custody, your protection order stands, and the financial matters are closed. Lena smiled, not wide, not dramatic, but soft and certain. A smile born from real strength. I always was, she whispered. Michael understood. He bowed slightly and stepped back, leaving her to her moment of peace. Lena held her baby closer, breathing in the tiny, sweet scent of new beginnings. She looked out the window at the bright sky, a sky finally free of storms. Her voice, or maybe her heart, spoke the truth she had earned. Some men lose everything because they never recognize the value of the woman standing right beside them. She kissed the baby's forehead, and sometimes the greatest revenge is simply walking away. If this were a camera, it would slowly pull back Lena in the warm glow of morning, rocking her child, a quiet smile on her face. Her empire behind her, her future ahead of her. Daniel nowhere in sight. As the scene faded in our minds, a single line would remain. Strength is born the moment silence ends. Somewhere distant, a phone buzzed on Michael's belt. A message flashed. New case request. Another woman in trouble. He glanced toward Lena's door, then toward the hallway. This story was over, but his work had only begun. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.